to Co-Opinions. My name is Josh, and today I have Brent on with me.
Hello.
And Nick.
Greetings, friends.
So today we are going to talk about something I've been wanting to discuss for quite a while, and that is microtransactions in video games. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about both elevator pitch for indie studios we're big fans of. But before even that, we're going to go around and talk about little game news and things we've been playing. Nick, why don't you kick it off?
So recently I've been playing River City Rival Showdown, I think is the name for it. This is a game that came out in November of last year in North America. It's part of the Kunio-kun series that most people know about from the game River City Ransom. That series has been around at this point for 30 years. It got to start off with Renegade, and this is kind of the latest variation of it. I was a little cynical about it when I saw that this was supposed to be like a 30th anniversary remake or reimagining of River City Ransom, because at this point, they've basically beaten that horse to death and tried to milk a dead horse, and then found that there's no longer any blood in the horse, if I can cross all my analogy
I'm about to say, do you milk blood from a horse? No blood, milk to squeeze from the horse stone.
This is the most ambitious analogy crossover ever.
Yes.
So with that, though, this game actually has turned out to be quite a bit of fun. There's a lot of non-linearity to it. There's a lot of branching paths, side quests, kind of similar to, I feel like they've done that with, maybe it was River City Ransom EX that came out, the GBA remake of it, has some variations of that kind of stuff. This is basically taking that and expanding that. So it's a fun kind of general formula. It's a good beat 'em up, and I think my favorite little experience with that I discovered is I was walking around in town just trying to talk to people, and what I found accidentally at one point when I was standing too far away was, oops, I punched and said, oh, I punched this guy in the back of the head. Now his gang is here, and now his gang is trying to fight me. And that's where I found out about a fight anywhere system, where you just walk up to any NPC, get in a brawl with them, and the fight will ensue.
Nice.
My favorite case for that is had a politician who was talking about how there's too many street hoodlums and people fighting in the streets, and how we need to clean up our communities and neighborhoods. I took that personally as Kunio-kun, so I kicked her in the back of the head. And yeah. And then the police showed up, which is a natural progression for events, I guess. Police hit like a truck, take off about a sixth of my hit point with each whack of their nightstick, and I was dealing like 1 damage with each punch. I really appreciated that just from a design perspective. So that's my little game I've been playing.
All right. Any little news that's jumped out recently? We're getting the rumor mill with E3 coming up, so I'm not sure if anything's jumped out at you. I know you've been kind of predisposed too.
There's nothing that's really jumped out at me as far as E3 goes. I guess on the news thing, one thing that's a real downside, that's a real bummer, was the news about the Gamers Club going away from Best Buy.
Yeah, you heard about that, Brent, right?
I did not.
So apparently I don't know if you have more details you'd like to share here other than it's going away.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty well the entire story. So they're not taking new customers, and existing customers are going to be sunsetted out of their existing contracts. Mm-hmm. I haven't done any looking into what other sort of deal programs like this there are out there. Obviously, there's Amazon Prime that also does the discount, but they've now hiked their price up to $120, and that's 2 price increases in pretty short order. Kind of makes me a little uneasy about that.
Mm-hmm. I think Amazon's going to be hurting from that.
Well, and on top of that, apparently Amazon's Gamers Reward, like their incentives, that's not doing great either. I heard that might actually be in its twilight as well.
Oh, they might get rid of the 20% discount too.
Yeah, and that's always been kind of a sticking point for me anyways, because the 20% was only for the first 2 weeks the game was out.
Oh.
Like with Best Buys, if a game is marked down from $60 to $20, even if the game's been out for 4 years, you still get the new game discount. So you get 20% off of that. That's why I've always been a bigger fan of the Gamers Club Unlocked. And mine runs out very shortly, but because of the way it's set up, I've already asked if I can use somebody else's, and I'm just going to use that till it runs out.
You're welcome.
Well, I didn't want to call you out specifically.
Josh is a freebie. The rest of y'all got to pay for this discount.
That's right. Double down.
I hold the conch.
Yes, God. Anyways, anything else, Nick?
I guess just curious, do you know how GameStop's program is supposed to work for that kind of stuff? Is that a viable alternative?
I'm going to say no.
I was about to say, I feel like anything GameStop related isn't a viable alternative.
Well, and that's the big thing, is that what really turns me off is the fact that things that used to be what everybody gets, like you buy two or three used games, you get one free. Now you have to be part of their paid club to do it. Like, it's just... I'm not a fan.
To be fair, the 20% thing seems so generous. I'm kind of wondering. I mean, I remember remember working at Walmart and you had the gun, you could see like what the markup was on each item, and the games was like, hey, they got this for $45, they're selling it for $50, that kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
By selling these things at 20% discount, I think for Amazon and Best Buy, they wanted these to be loss leaders, and that just didn't materialize.
Yeah, now mind you, we're more or less out of the pre-order game at this point, so I don't know how everybody else works on that front. I don't know how well pre-orders work nowadays. I feel like the golden age of pre-orders is behind us because I think a lot of people have got smart to the fact that you're putting down money for something you can't guarantee the quality of.
I think people still pre-order a lot. I mean, Square Enix is still heavily involved with that as well. You get these limited power-ups. Like, you had it for Lightning Returns where they had, like, the special costumes. More recently, like in the Dragon Quest Heroes, the first game, then you had all of, like, these slime weapons. And it was a little bit better off than your normal starting gear. It would be good for, like, the first 5% of the game, and then you just naturally get stronger things. But it beats the default item that you have. It's little chintzy things like that. I mean, it's nice little frills. I'm not going to knock them, but it's certainly not making me go out and put my $60 down early.
And I was going to say, let's be fair. I feel like the minute any game's announced, Walmart, Best Buy, Amazon, and GameStop will throw it up on their website.
Oh, yeah. You see that during E3, during the middle of their conferences. They'll have blank boxes with just the name.
Or in the case of Walmart, they throw it up before E3.
Yeah, well, way to spoil Rage 2, guys. All right, anything else, Nick?
Yep.
Brent, why don't you go next? Sniffles?
I'm still doing the gauntlet that is Mass Effect.
I see you playing that.
How many hours into that game are you?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look.
Well, and it's also misleading.
Anything involving me is also a misnote because I leave it paused. So there's at least 10 hours worth of cut that off.
Oh, that's being generous. It took him, quote unquote, like 30 hours to beat Undertale. I'm like, what did you do? I left it on for a solid day. Like, all right.
That will do it.
That will.
Yeah, I was a little bit there where I wasn't playing it a whole bunch for a few weeks, but now this weekend I picked up pretty heavily, I'm hoping.
No. What's it called with the whispering?
Are you talking about the sexual arousal from
Well,
sound
it's not
effects?
always sexual, but yes, usually sexual. It's the whisper thing. I'm trying to remember what that's called.
I think we've gone on a tangent, and how about we just get off that tangent? What else do you want to talk about, Brent?
Well, because we got to finish it up, because as Brent goes in for the final stretch, he's about to finish up the game that didn't do well enough to discontinue the franchise for the foreseeable future. Let's see how it pans out. Silence on the course, please.
I've still really enjoyed it. It's just, there's a lot.
To be fair, BioWare seems like it's a bit of a mess in general right now. They basically got Anthem. They hinted at a Dragon Age sequel that was going to have you go to the Tevinter Imperium at the end of their last DLC. That's been a few years now, and there have been rumors that they kind of started that up and then just completely canceled and killed the project. Maybe that was the same team that did Mass Effect Andromeda was supposed to do that. And after Andromeda bombed, they just said, we're just going to retire some of you people. You're 30. That's a good retirement age.
Yep.
I feel there's a lot to this game, and there's probably too much of a good thing. But I do feel like some of the complaints are like...
Too much of a good... Sorry. Go ahead.
I feel like some of the complaints I've read are people complaining that they played the first three, so they know how all their choices from game 1 panned out to game 3, and they're expecting that in the first game, and they don't understand when it doesn't. And it's like, you played an entire trilogy. Well, I think this is bad gamer expectations, is what it is.
There was also, and you didn't play the original.
No, yeah, it was jankety when it came out. It wasn't Unity janky.
Yeah, that was a pretty low bar. I like to call it Mass Effect Andromeda. Woo, good times. All right. Anyways, anything else you've been playing?
No.
All right.
News. First, there's the Nintendo did do the trademark for an N64.
Yeah, N64 Classic or what, a mini, I would get. So, shocker, right?
So, did they make an official announcement that the Virtual Console's done?
Yeah, they said they wouldn't be using the Virtual Console branding on the eShop.
Okay, I apparently missed this.
Yeah, that was approximately the same time they made their paid online service. They started talking about it.
Okay.
I guess at this point, everyone just has a Raspberry Pi hooked up to their TV that they're using as an all-purpose games box.
Well, and on top of that, they don't have to, because from GameCube to Wii, with the Wii, they needed to make sure, because the GameCube did lackluster, sorta, they wanted to make sure they had something that could definitely move it, and I think that's why we saw the Virtual Console take shape there. And with the Wii U, they had to ride on it real hard, because if they didn't have classic games and they didn't have enthusiasm, they didn't have a lot. As soon as they've ported Super Mario 3D World from the Wii U over to the Switch, they have nothing. I mean, maybe they'll bring over Wonderful 101, but I ain't counting on it.
That being fair, I do like having these cartridge games digitally, and I don't want to go out and buy an NES and SNES Classic.
Oh, okay. About to say, you don't have to buy them. They have the classic versions with the greatest hits.
And even then, some of the games I have aren't on them that were on the Virtual Console, so...
Or you can get the SNES 7X emulator, slap that on your computer, get a USB controller in. It's not going to be perfect, but it's something.
The problem is I would have to do it on my older computer, and even then I don't trust it.
And we actually tried to do that, and we couldn't get a lot of the USB controllers to work when it was weird. Like, we had a lot of problems trying to get that set up. But anyways.
Apparently, this was the one I went Star Wars news game, a Mass Effect Dragon Age veteran is working on Star Wars game for Respawn.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you're just excited about the rumor, I suppose?
I'm intrigued.
Well, it's going to be like the Star Wars 1919 where it was supposed to focus on Flora Coruscant. It's going to be really exciting, and then they're going to cancel it at the last minute on you.
He's still salty about that. Don't rub salt in the wound.
Well, the 1313 is George Lucas did not understand video games or not movies, and you can't just change things every day.
I think you could have stopped that. George Lucas didn't understand.
Oh, sick burn. Sick burn. All right. Anything else?
Well, there was that PS5 rumor.
Oh, yeah. I'll touch on that because I'll do that. Most of my news is going to be E3 related.
Okay.
So, anyways, I've been playing a handful of stuff. I can't remember if I mentioned this previously, but the game Monument Valley was free on my phone, and I'd heard about this. I know you'd heard about it because of Kevin Spacey show where he was president.
House of Cards. That game.
It's a puzzle game, and I'd always heard about it, but I hadn't had a chance to play it because I typically don't pay money for puzzle games, but it was free, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And I loved it enough that I beat it in about 2 sittings, and then I paid $1. You wanted to make a Kevin Spacey joke here? Is that what I'm saying?
So what you're saying is the real puzzle for you is how to get the game for free.
Yes. That was actually pretty clever. I'm going to give him full points for that one. Same way I didn't pay for Lara Croft Go because it was free. So I'm like, download. This is fun. $0. But I ended up paying $2 for the DLC for it. Turns out I could have got that for free, but I didn't bargain hunt quite enough. Those $2 will haunt me for the rest of my days. But it was really interesting. I also picked up the game Needhog 2 finally. I can't say that I beat it because the arcade mode is literally 17 minutes long. And all of the real joy is playing it against other humans, including but not limited to people online who have to hate me. Because I am currently undefeated, but that is with 3 fights. So there's not a real thriving community there, but the way they've rebalanced, it's fascinating.
So you're going to retire at 3-0?
I'm considering retiring at the undefeated champ, yes. I also beat the game Iconoclast, which I'd been hearing good things about. I think it was made by like one dude over the course of almost a decade. And it was really interesting, but just from the name, Iconoclasts means somebody who is intentionally defiling religious iconography. The game definitely comes through on that promise. It's a little heavy-handed at times. One thing that I will note, because I know you're going to play it at some point, Kraus, the interactions you have with certain NPCs affect the final boss fight. It doesn't make it impossible, but it can make it easier. There's 4 phases to the first part of the boss fight. Hey, this is some Legend of Dragoon nonsense up in here.
Would you say the game took a critical eye toward organized religion or more sympathetic? Or?
Critical. Okay. Highly critical.
Okay, that's about what I was expecting. But
And that being said, they do a thing at the very tail end that subverts that criticality in a way that made me smile. Not to say that it was like highly agnostic or highly God is dead or whatever, but it did a thing where it took such a dramatically different perspective that I went, huh.
I think I've played enough games where I've killed God now. I think probably 24, 3 of those that when I hear about a game being critical of organized religion, it's like, oh, this is a greatest hits album. All right.
Well, and that's the thing is that you kind of do, but I can't spoil anything beyond that because it's literally the last fight. It goes just out of nowhere. It's great.
Nice.
Other than that, I finally wrapped up Layton's Mystery Journey, which is that official Layton 7 that came out on the 3DS. They tried to do something different. Professor Layton is no longer the protagonist. It's his daughter. They also don't have a single unified narrative along the whole story, which really hurts the momentum. You don't feel a connection to the events that happen in the last one because it hasn't been built up over the entire game. And the game starts off, frankly, very weak with some silly mysteries. Like, nobody who's listening to this is probably going to play the game because it wasn't that good, if we're being honest. The first one, you have to figure out where the hands to Big Ben went. Turns out that the hands were made of pastry because the actual hands got broke and it rained the night before, so the pastry dissolved. Like, is this what I'm playing? The second or third mystery involves figuring out why the last scene to a movie premiere got stolen. Turns out a bird pooped on it, and like it's so silly.
This seems great for like if you had a 7 or an 8-year-old kid and you want to give them a game that was going to teach them more about language and about puzzles, though. And especially like you said, with the puzzles being kind of clever, cute, cheeky.
Yeah, okay, and there was a different one of my problems is all the cheeky puzzles. There was one near the tail end of the game where there were 5 slot cars. It was S, A, B, C, like G. And the thing was, there is a question mark slot car in there. What would, between S and A, what goes between S and A? Well, it was a joke because the word start was also at the front. So what's between S and A is T. The question mark is entirely irrelevant. It didn't ask you what the question mark was. It asked what's between the S and the A. Like, this is stupid.
And kids love Stump the Chump. It's like the question, a plane crashes on the border between U.S. and Mexico. Where do you bury the survivors? Every grade schooler has 100 of these kind of questions, and this is a great way to go ahead and give them more. It's entertainment for children, and you are a 30-year-old man.
I am a 30-year-old man. As much as I get called a man-child, I am a man. Anyways, so that's the stuff I've been playing. I started up Neo. That's fascinating because it is Team Ninja's take on the Dark Souls type game. And the way the engines interact with, like, you've seen me play Dark Souls or Bloodborne, yes. Brent. And that game, I'm not going to say it's deliberate, but they have a very notable movement to them. Team Ninja is the same people who does Ninja Gaiden, correct me if I'm wrong? And you can tell it's the same kind of engine. It moves much differently. It's fascinating. It's also not nearly as difficult currently. I just started too. But if memory serves, in Bloodborne, the first enemy you meet is a werewolf who disembowels you. So immediately not as difficult. But as far as little game stuff goes, I'm going to keep this brief because this has gone on crazy long, is E3's coming up real soon. We're seeing rumors about, I'm trying to think if Nintendo Nintendo rumors are coming out about, I think the Pokemon games are being rumored. Smash is supposed to be playable.
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to be playable, so we're going to get a release date. The only ones I'm not looking forward to are the EA and the PC conferences because they never have anything for me. Ubisoft occasionally has stuff related to Assassin's Creed. That's about all, especially since Assassin's Creed Origin was somewhat interesting.
And I'm still convinced for Origins, the next one is not going to come out this year.
I mean, that they have talked about it, though.
They have, but there was also rumors after Syndicate of Origin, so.
Yeah. So, and Bethesda's been killing it the last few years, so I'm stoked to see. Microsoft, I want them to figure something out. And this year, Sony has said instead of a smattering across all games, they're going to focus on some big ones and give you an indication of other games, but it's not going to be like last year where in that hour they showed like 45 things and you never got a deep dive at anything.
Do you think for Bethesda we get more Fallout, more Elder Scrolls, both or neither?
I think Elder Scrolls. I think it's been long enough since Oblivion. No, not Oblivion.
Skyrim. The game's been released on every console.
That's the thing. Is that
don't you want to own it on 7?
I'm gonna play it on a smart fridge. It's gonna be one of those things where when you get the cheese, then my barbarian eats the cheese.
It'd be like, you're out of cheese. Since when did you guys get a tie-in with Schnooks?
We're releasing a new Elder Scrolls game, but first, Skyrim, fridge this.
Yeah, that actually wouldn't surprise me that much. But at this point, it wouldn't surprise me. This is a real outside shot, but it's been a few years since Doom at this point.
I was about to
feel
say
like
Doom 2.
They could do something with that.
Rage 2 got leaked.
Rage 2 got leaked. Like, if anything, I don't think it's been long enough since Fallout, and I'm going to record an episode someday about all the new generation Fallout games. Fallout 4 was wildly underwhelming to me. I won't get into it too much now. I don't think it's been long enough since Fallout. Wolfenstein 2 just came out. I think Doom and Elder Scrolls are the big bet. Rage was supposed to probably be a big surprise, but thanks, Walmart. So, we're going to record, actually, I'm wanting to have you on, Nick, to record the E3 episode here right after E3 comes out. That'll be a few weeks from now-ish. Actually, by the time this goes up, E3 might have already happened. So disregard all that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the elevator pitch part of this, of the indie studios. I've been playing a lot of games. We've all been playing a lot of games over the last few years where indie studios, which is a studio primarily composed of less than, 20 people usually, are putting games out. And due to how easy it is to put games out now, easy is not the right word. Making games is crazy hard. I'm sorry, any independent developer that might listen to this.
How many dedicated people working in small teams are creating video games?
And it's easier to expose your product to everybody nowadays. Whereas before, to distribute a game, that's a different expose. To distribute your game to a wide mass of people, it was primarily console or shareware. And how are you going to make money off of shareware? And there have been some games that have had significant... Do you actually have a way you can make money off shareware?
Doom was spread via shareware.
No joke.
Yeah, it was very common to basically be, here's the first episode, and you can go ahead and buy this game because it is kind of an early example of demo. So yeah, shareware is a great way to get exposure and to kind of lead people into your product.
Now, I didn't play PC stuff at all, though, so that's where I had for console gaming, especially since we've only seen the advent of independent games on consoles in the last 6-ish years. I think PS3 is what really kicked that off, personally. I wanted to go around and give an elevator pitch, which is to say a very short description of some of our favorite independent studios, and then we can ask questions and such. Brent, why don't you go first?
Okay, I had a few to choose from. I guess I'm going to go with Lucas Pope, the guy who brought us Papers, Please. Mm-hmm. It's how to describe Papers, Please. It's an interesting game about a dystopian Cold War government in Eastern Europe, and you have to be the border crossing guy who checks everyone's papers and has to make tough decisions about who to let across and who to deny.
So what's the appeal of this?
I don't know. The appeal of this game is just the intrigue.
So the big thing to me about Papers, Please when I played it, and Nick, I know you played it as well, is I would describe that game as a stress simulator. When you look at the screens for it, you would think there is no possible way that game will have the emotional resonance it will. You're looking literally at papers and deciding whether or not to pass or fail them and why. But the increase in the amount of bureaucracy tied in with the political intrigue, as well as the fact that you have a family you're supposed to be supporting, as well as all these supporting characters like, what was his, Georgie, who is the best. Or
I was so upset when they did that fan film and he wasn't in there.
Yeah, mine. Did you see that fan? It's crazy good. Yeah. Goddamn collection.
Send that too.
Yeah. Anyways, or there's the point where there's the family fleeing from the oppression of their Kalechi, I think it is, but one of them has the right papers and the other one doesn't. And so you have to split them up. Otherwise, if you don't fail one of them, you'll get a mark against yourself and you might not be able to feed your family for the night. Like, that is a perfect microcosm of that game. So,
and there's always the chance they'll catch you. They'll throw you in jail.
Yes, you can
for treason. Or there's the chance that some of the people you let through are actually terrorists at some point.
What I really enjoyed was the certificates you got, especially the certificate for presence. You didn't do your job well, but you were there. You showed up.
I put that certificate on my cubicle wall when I worked at SLU as a help desk person. And I put my 3DS right below it. I put certificate of presence. Yeah, I was about done with that job at that point. But anyways, what are you looking forward to coming out from the guy? There's only one thing, so you got a real straight and narrow here. So it's called The Voyage of the Obra
something
Dinn. Yeah. I saw the blankness in your eyes. I'm like, this is a different than the normal Brent blankness. It's called The Voyage of the Obra Dinn. He's been working on it for years at this point. It's going to be good when it comes out, but a one-man development studio, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
So anyways, anything else, Brent?
No.
Okay. Nick, why don't you go next?
Well, I screwed up on this one, forgot to prep for this at all. So the one that I decided to pick was Concept, mainly because I wanted to work Mighty Number 9 back into this podcast.
Oh my God.
You're welcome, Chris.
Oh my God. Yeah, listen to this with your kid, Chris.
So Concept is no longer an indie developer, but I did think it was worth noting them out. They were a team that had apparently 15 employees, at least as of time of acquisition, from what I saw very briefly on Wikipedia right before this episode. Very deep research was being done.
Deep.
With that, they got acquired by Level 5, which is really interesting to me. I was telling these fellas, the new combined company name is Level 5 Concept, but Level 5 had like 300 employees and bought Concept, which had like 15 employees. So how come the co-billing is happening there? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Concept and if they actually have any sort of product that's being done. Right now, they've done Mighty Number 9, which I think we can all agree is better than nothing.
No.
Thank you. No, so anyway, that's my indie developer.
All right. Is there anything that is coming out in the near future that you're looking forward to them at all? I know they're supposed to be doing another...
They had the Red Ash thing that they talked about, which they had gotten the funding for, or was that the anime? So they had the anime, then they had kind of a mighty Mega Man Legends thing, which was, hey, if you like Mega Man Legends, then you'll love this game.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I thought somebody...
Mighty Number 9.
Well, and yeah, Red Ash, actually, there was a huge amount of controversy because they're like, hey, we have a Mighty Number 9 announcement, but we're not going to make it till our Kickstarter for Red Ash is over. It's like, what could it be? And yeah, it was a delay. I think Red Ash ended up not meeting its goals. Somebody stepped in to give them the money. It became a whole cluster. Mighty Number 9's garbage. Red Ash is never coming out. Boo on Mighty Number 9. I can't speak to NT. No Concept. I don't know much about them.
I would really enjoy if that Mega Man Legends style kind of game came out, being a kind of a third person action shooter game where you're kind of exploring through different dungeons and having those RPG elements. There's probably games that are doing that kind of thing out there, but the one that captured the Mega Man Legends magic, I can't really think of offhand. So I'd be happy if it came to fruition.
All right.
But there's nothing else I can think of the Concepts even teased or started a third or fourth or fifth Kickstarter for.
Ugh,
They're moving to Indiegogo this time.
We keep your money no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah, God. All right. Anything else?
Nope. What's yours, Josh?
Mine is going to be no surprise to anybody. I'm going with Supergiant Games. They've only put out 3 games at this point, their first effort being Bastion in 2011. That was the first game I played. It looked gorgeous when I saw it on the Summer of Play. I picked it up. It was immediately enamored with it. It was very colorful. It had a unique approach. I talked it up to everybody. The seeming dynamic narrative I thought was a fantastic idea. The fact that when you did different things in the game, it made it seem like the narrator was actually narrating what you were doing. I could see how the trick of it worked, but it was still really unique to me. And when a couple years later the game Transistor came out, initially it just looked to me like Bastion, but more cyberpunky. And it wasn't at all. They let you play up to the first boss like it was Bastion with a run around and smack everybody. But if you continued playing that way, the first boss was going to hand you your butt on a platter. Simple as that. But the game did an interesting thing because in addition to the first boss making it so you had to actually use the gameplay style, they also figured out a way to encourage more experimentation with the weapons. So when you died, it made it so one of your equipped weapons went away for X amount of checkpoints. And that made it so you had to put different weapons in different slots. And the only way you could really fail is when you ran out of everything, which meant you had to try all these different things in all your different primary, secondary, and ambient slots. And made it for a really interesting gameplay combination. They also kept their signature narrative involved. Logan Cunningham is the guy who does the voice work for most of it. He did the narrator in the first one, the Transistor in the second one, and the judge in the third game, Pyre, that I'll now talk about, where much like the second game, Transistor, the third game, when I started playing it, like, this is nothing like the second game. I'm not sure I'm going to enjoy this. But as I kept going, the story ended up really drawing me in. The gameplay, which I originally thought was kind of weird, it's kind of a 3-on-3 occult Space Jam thing. It's so strange. But as you continue playing, each person has a different strength they have. You all have your auras. Whenever you do or you don't have this orb, you need to take from one end to the other. Only one person can move at a time. Some people have small auras but move fast. Other people can project their auras in a big way. And to encourage and if you are in proximity, your auras get bigger. So there's strategy to how you place, there's strategy to how you move. And if you continue using people in battles, you get a quote-unquote ritual sickness, which is to say you can't use them for a couple, which means you can't just keep riding the same team.
The Space Jam comparison really is setting expectations that can never be fulfilled, because now I'm expecting to have Bill Murray or Charles Barkley in a cult-style game, and only one of those has happened. We don't have a Bill Murray Shut Up and Jam Gaiden yet.
We don't have a Shut Up and Jam 2. So, anyways, that's neither here nor there. This game ended up. And I really want, because I think, Nick, you've played 2 of them. Brent, you've only played one of them. I want you guys to finish playing their catalog, because there is a point at the end of Pyre that really stuck with me. And this is why one of the things that made me want to have this podcast in the future about trophies and achievements, because there's a storyline throughout the entirety of Pyre that there's no real incentive for you to keep going with the storyline, but it's interacting with an NPC in a way I found to be fulfilling. If you fulfill all of these requirements near the very end, the NPC's like, hey, I've been doing this a while and nobody seemed to have cared about me as much as you have. It'd mean a lot if I could go with you if you leave. And you get to say yes or no. And that's how it is. And if you say yes, she's like, awesome. And you take her with you, and that there's no trophy, nothing. But it's a fulfilling emotional payoff for something that's been developing organically through the game. And that's how I feel all their games are. I legit love this developer. That's why I interviewed to be a secretary for them. I would have if they would have paid enough, I would have moved to San Francisco. That's all there is to it. But on that note, you guys comfortable to move into our main topic?
Yep.
Fantastic. So getting into our main topic, something that's been more in the headlines since, late last year, I think it was? Is that when Battlefield 2 came out?
Yes.
Is microtransactions. Now, microtransactions is not a new term by any stretch of the imagination, but with loot boxes, they have really come to the forefront, because loot boxes are a type of microtransaction that a lot of people think is really unfair, because it's very similar to gambling. The idea being you pay some smaller amount and you potentially get a good item. Now, Battlefront, I need to make sure to say this right, Battlefront 2 is not the first game to do this. I know some PC games have been doing loot boxes forever and a day, but this provoked a lot of reactions. So I'm going to get into it. At the time, these were 2 very strongly dissenting opinions in the room here. Time has cooled those fires, but I think there are still strong opinions to be had. So, let's get this kicked off by, Nick, what was the first example of microtransactions that you can recall? It should be a little different as a PC player, because me and Brent primarily do consoles.
I'm not so sure that there actually is another example that comes to mind that came before the before the case of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion with the horse armor DLC. Mm-hmm. I would say it wouldn't surprise me if you have some other MMO cases that are out there like that. They've always kind of gone for the freemium model. EverQuest, of course, started off with a subscription, but added in a cash shop over time as those subscriptions went by the wayside. And it wouldn't surprise me if for some of those MMOs that they started doing that. I think one of the key things there, though, with regards to those kind of MMOs, is a lot of the stuff that got sold has tended to be cosmetic in nature, or it would be things like you have extra slots, extra kind of companions, things that go outside of the hardcore rating kind of tiered progression style of content and veer more in the direction towards straight up role playing. Like, oh, here's a cash shop where you can buy a special furnishing to go ahead and put into your EverQuest 2 house. Those kind of characteristics.
I know that and this is not old, but one of the ones I saw semi-recently was WoW with their special spectral mounts. made me want to blow my brains out. And people are like, oh yeah, spend $70 on this mount. Are you insane?
Now, to say something nice about Blizzard in that case, they have done fundraisers for charity. Like, hey, go ahead and buy this thing, and it's going to go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Oh, what are you,
stupid kids?
You're such an idiot giving $70 so that child can go ahead and hang out with Mr. T for a day before he dies of leukemia. You're real good Samaritan, Josh.
Okay, I've been called worse. But any other early examples? Because I am seeing when I did my own research that the horse armor was the thing that really cemented the idea of...
That's the one that I think got a lot of actual press reaction just because everyone was kind of looking at that going, so I pay you $2 and I get a little silver shiny skin from my horse.
Cool.
All right.
And I would like it to be called out that we are going to acknowledge that free-to-play games technically have microtransactions, which is to say games where you can pay money to recharge your energy, and energy is points that can be used. But that's not really... free-to-play is different than a microtransaction in my mind, because you can technically play most of the game never having spent dollars. Microtransactions are having paid additional money on top of the game you already bought.
I would actually disagree there with the more recent case that's came out, the Harry Potter game that came out recently for tablets. That's one where it is technically free to play, but playing Mafia Wars, the old Zynga Facebook game where they sold you the energy kind of packs. You in that instance, like you said, you could theoretically just go ahead and let this stretch on forever, and it's not like there was some tight story to the Mafia Wars game.
I got the golden toilet.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are an excellent Josh.
I'm the best.
So with this though, for that Harry Potter game, this is one where you really can't do much of anything before you hit against that barrier, and you kind of start to wonder, how long will these servers and these timers actually be up and functional? How long would you have to play one of these freemium games without paying money before you could actually beat it? Would this be a 10-year endeavor by using the natural recharge timer?
I can actually speak to that because my girlfriend is playing that game, and she is in chapter 11 of that game. The big thing that game is getting criticism for, in my mind, is it is a game that is primarily supposed to be targeted at a younger audience, but the points where they hit you with the paywall, where they, especially near the beginning, they give you just enough energy to get up to a certain point, but the point that you run out is where your player character is being choked out by a vine. To a game that's targeted at a child, what the game is saying, if you pay $2, your character won't get choked out for another hour. Adults don't care. They can dissociate the fact that this is not a real thing. But for children who may have formed an attachment to this avatar, I would imagine be potentially traumatic. So you can continue to play. I have no idea how long it is, but there are certain... I saw, and this will be the last we talk about free to play here, but a thing that was happening in some of those clicker games in the last few years was, in addition to having to need so much energy to perform an action, you also had to have a chance at a randomly dropping item from some other, and that meant you could potentially sink hundreds of energy to get this drop. I don't like doing this in World of Warcraft. I don't want to do it in a game where I have to wait a certain amount of time to potentially get a drop. So, but anyways.
Well, I feel like what you're talking about goes to some
Loot
stuff.
Boxes.
Well, just the stuff with the Harry Potter game goes to some stuff like things that have leaked out of companies, like the corporate mentality of apps, where they want to take advantage of the fact that children have control of maybe their parents' phone, and then they'll use the credit card. They know what they're doing.
Yep.
They know they're taking advantage of innocent children to get the money out of them.
And I feel like when we talk about microtransactions, then it's kind of it's part of the consistent problem that there's been of how do you fund creating a digital media experience and get enough money off of that there's seed money for the next project. And I feel like this is one of those things that gamers are not unsympathetic to that situation. They're cool with some of these details, but when you have cases like that where you feel like you're being treated like a literal cow whose udders are being grabbed, you get a little upset about that, and that's where you start to see a lot of the indignant angst.
Well, and we may actually record, though we've touched on a lot of the topics at this point, a smaller episode about free-to-play games, it's fascinating to read how they develop these games, both to focus on whales, which is to say it's not the 1,000 people who don't pay $1 for this game or pay $1. It's the one guy who pays $250 to dump. That's who these are aimed at, is the one guy who's like, I want to do everything right now and be the best. The free-to-play is also a pay-to-win type thing in a lot of cases. So, but
I'm interested by that definition of whale for $250. I'm thinking of the Final Fantasy 15 Royal Collector's Edition that retailed for $250, and then you can buy the season pass for $25, and then we're going to do the Royal Pack for $15.
How's that?
Would you say that someone who buys all of that stuff is a whale?
I don't know. How's your Lightning Returns pocket watch?
Still functioning.
Okay.
The finest of discount jewelry.
Yeah, I still remember that. It's a monument to a crappy game. Ooh, buddy. Transitioning off of that, either of you guys, have you ever paid for something you would consider a microtransaction, be it cosmetic, now that includes, we're including DLC in some cases is being lumped in with microtransactions. So like levels or...
I guess, yes, technically.
Your My Pretty Pony, Gears of War skin?
No, God. Is there that?
I'm sure that...
God, it probably is. No, I was about to say the Batman skins in both Arkham City and Arkham Knight.
Yeah.
Though Arkham Knight is a bitter topic.
You have put... why is it a bitter topic?
Because of GameStop.
Oh, yeah. Okay, can you give me the short version of this story? Because it's an interesting anecdote.
My aunt bought me the game. I was on the fence about the DLC. They kind of talked her into buying it for me when she got it for my birthday. And I was kind of pissed at just the way they kind of got her to get it.
GameStop has garbage tactics. He's like, well, your nephew would really love to get this. And I mean, a lot of other people are... I'm not positive that's what they did, but... yeah.
I mean, there's things in it I wanted to do, but I don't know if I wanted to pay that much for it.
Cosmetic reskin.
Well, there's a lot, like the full season pass. So
yeah, a lot. Okay. And we won't get too much into the season pass side of this because I feel like we've actually had a topic previously about season passes.
But I do feel like when you talk about microtransaction in the vein of Battlefront 2, there's some arguments to be made there.
I feel like the micro thing is kind of an important part of the segmentation there. And that's where, in my mind, downloadable content or a map pack for a first-person shooter, that's a content pack that's being sold separately. That's different, in my mind, from a microtransaction.
Mm-hmm. No. Okay, what I'm saying is, so the argument would be Battlefront 1 had their season pass for $50. I remember this because Warner Brothers had announced their Arkham Knight Pass. They're like, this is $40. And I'm like, so then EA is like, hold my beer. We're doing it for $50.
You get a handy with that, or?
I mean, Fallout 4 sure should have done that.
The argument there would be that the reason they said, one of the arguments for Battlefront 2 not having a season pass was so that everyone would be on the same playing field, be able to have all the same stuff, all the same levels together, be able to play with your friends without having to buy it. But in turn, they did microtransactions
in the worst way they possibly could.
Oh yeah. No.
Cycling back to the question that you were kind of putting to the forum, Josh. My first use of a microtransaction, it's the only one that actually I could think of that I did, is Tales of Exilia did have some microtransaction stuff. Some of it got you like gear items. You could get more money. You could buy in-game money basically if you wanted rare stuff. So I found myself in the secret bonus dungeon. I had been having a lot of fun with the game, and I was kind of curious to go ahead and beat the secret boss and just see what happened. Is there a little bit of extra story stuff? Any of that kind of thing. I wasn't quite strong enough to the challenge. I was also like level 95. And what I saw with this is, okay, well, I can go ahead and spend a couple of days grinding, or I can go ahead and buy the way they sold it in was you paid like $2 or $3 and you got 5 levels. Mm-hmm. So it's like, all right, I can hit the mini cap for all my characters for $2 or $3, the price of the soda vending machine. I can go ahead and knock out the secret boss. I was pretty ripe with cash at the moment, so it was just one of those things. Yeah, you know what? Sure, why not? I'll do this. Probably wouldn't do that again, but that was my first experience, and for me that was a reasonable kind of thing. You're talking about a single player game, and if you want to be able to just go ahead and cheese through and play on this hyper easy mode or whatever, and pay the company $20 extra for doing that, you know what? Go for it, Skipper.
And it's interesting. I have a similar version of that actually. The game Prototype 2. There is a little bit of a backstory here just because I think you said you compared it to Something's Guilt when they paid a whole bunch of money for like Louisiana or something because they screwed somebody else out of it. The idea behind it was that due to a series of mix-ups, we got the collector's edition for Prototype 2 for the amount that we should have got the standard edition for. This was one part me not communicating well to my girlfriend, one part the Best Buy employee being dumb, and one part my girlfriend being shockingly good at convincing people that what they saw on their computer was wrong. That was great. Anyways, so I get home.
The specific historical case that you were talking about there was the acquisition of the West following the Mexican War in the mid 1800s. So we got most of that territory for a song, and then we grafted on a little bit of southern New Mexico and all that for a ridiculous dollar per acreage thing. And some people kind of viewed that at that time and also historically as being a little bit of guilt of, yeah, we basically did an imperialist colonial expansion thing on you. Sorry about that. Here's more money so we can finish our railroad here.
And on that vein, when they came out with microtransactions for Prototype 2, I'm like, I took your other stuff for free, so I'm going to give you money for this part. But what I ended up buying was something called Medusa's Gaze, quote unquote. If I clicked in the left stick, it literally one-shot everything. A laser beam came out of my eye.
That's amazing. That makes me think of the Dead Space 2 pew pew gun that we got.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because we're going to circle back to Dead Space and when that got all a hullabaloo about microtransactions. But yeah, I legit paid like $5 and I went zzz, zzz. I was knocking like armored helicopters out of the sky. Zzz, zzz.
What's interesting about these kind of cases where you're talking about being overpowered in a single-player type of game, though, is I can kind of envision cases where that gets kind of perverted. Like, that was the criticism with regards to Middle-earth Shadow of War was, yeah, the presence of this cache thing, even though you can do all this stuff naturally, the mere presence and existence of this distorts things. So if you talk about these kind of games, like for my case for Tales of Exilia, then it was one of those things where this is just 5-level standard. It's not like you're going to be encouraged to go ahead and do this. But you can imagine a game that's designed and gated in such a way where the challenge is either you need to grind for 100 hours or you can pay $3 and get to this next story cutscene. And kind of similar to the Harry Potter thing, maybe it's one of those things where, oh no, Eris or whichever character you want is in great peril. If you can go ahead and fund this, then you can save this character who's in peril immediately. But otherwise, it's going to take 100 hours of grinding. And meanwhile, you're going to hear that character's screams every time. There's a possibility for malicious design in here where I understand the ill ease that people sit with these kind of conversations.
Well, and there's kind of a different degree of that, going back to the idea of time versus money. When Brent and I were getting back into Grand Theft Auto with friend of the show, Aaron, he needed to get a whole bunch of money. And there were two ways this could have been done. He chose to go the route where he played after work for like 2 hours a day for a week. And it's a very zen thing when you know what you're doing, so it's kind of relaxing. But at the same time, he might have put in 15 to 20 hours to get the amount of money that he needed to make these possible. He could have paid $50 to get in-game currency instead. And then it becomes a matter of how valuable is your free time. I'm not downing on the guy because he enjoyed it. But that's saying that your time was not worth $2.50 an hour to have the amount of currency. And if you enjoy it, more power to you. I
was going to say, I thought you were a big fan of the quote, time enjoyed is not time wasted.
I am a big fan of that, but I can't fathom doing the same mission. I did something, the real quick anecdote. I played a game, a 3D Dot Game Heroes, where I had to play a mini game 48 times so I could have enough currency to get all the swords. And it wasn't unenjoyable. But was that really the best way I could have spent my time? No, it wasn't. I know this now, but at the time I'm like, I have the time, why not? So if he enjoyed it, more power to him. But I find myself, especially as I'm getting older and making more money, that like if this isn't enjoyable, why am I doing it when I could just pay this amount of money? But the other side of that is, if this isn't enjoyable, why am I playing this game?
That's where I was having this conversation with a friend of ours, and I made that argument. I'm like, it gets to the point where I'm not going to spend this money. So if it starts to become tedious, like Battlefront 2, if people are too overpowered, I'll just stop. Well, I don't feel an enjoyment in it.
And another side of that is something you've seen in the last few Assassin's Creed games is the time saver packs. Do you have that written down on your little... So the time saver packs are, you can spend X amount of in-game currency and it basically maxes out all of your consumable materials so you can instantly create all the upgrades. If you're going to just buy the progression that you get by progressing through the game, like I guess I don't know why. It's a lot of money. Like it's $40. So...
Well, I think that gets into that conversation about why do people use walkthroughs? Why do people play on the super easy mode of games where there's no challenge? And you do seem to have a distinct subculture of people that just want to experience an interactive narrative without any sort of frustration or challenge, never getting a game over, never having any sort of sense of loss. And to a certain degree, if people want to pay them for that pleasure, I can't really fault business people for being like, hey, let's go ahead and graft on a branch that satisfies that audience.
Yeah, I think another reason that we see that as a paid thing, and I won't get too much into this, is I think that trophies and achievements have something to do with it. Because I'm willing to bet they could make a super easy baby cakes mode. And you see this in some games where like, this has 0 challenge, you're playing it for the narrative. By the way, you get no achievements for this. Or you have a game like Assassin's Creed Origins where they don't gate any of them by difficulty. And they're like, if you don't want to do all the collecty stuff that involves opening up treasure chests, killing animals, etc., you can spend a whole bunch of money and it's done. But Penny Arcade roasted that idea pretty well. It's like, pay $60 and we'll uninstall the game for you.
What's interesting to me when we talk, I guess, about microtransactions and loot boxes is what kind of that evolution. So you're starting from just, hey, you're going to pay money and this is a concrete product that you are getting in return. So you have that shift where you're getting something concrete for your money to having something where it's, well, you're going to have a chance of things. And what I've heard is that this is a lot worse for Ford-style games, the gacha-style kind of things, where it's almost like kind of a capsule package, and you have people burning large amounts of money on that. It's most interesting to me with that kind of stuff. It feels like the most egregious cases of that aren't things that we're experiencing here in the North American market, but the ongoing debate about what's going to happen as far as the display of information, like odds, like. Do we get into a world where it's almost like gambling, where you buy a scratcher ticket and you see on the back, hey, just so you know, you literally only have a 1 in 4 chance of winning, and that includes breaking even? Do you start to have that happen? Like, hey, you know this really sexy swimsuit character skin for Chun-Li in Street Fighter 6? Yeah, just so you know, that loot box thing where you can only get it from a loot box, I think, yeah, you should probably know. You only have like a 1 in 300 million chance of getting that. So anyway, keep buying these tickets though. You know, for $10 you can get 500 tickets. That's a lot of tickets.
Well, I know some countries have ruled that loot boxes are gambling.
Yeah, the UK. Well, the UK had it up for. I thought they ruled it too.
I thought Sweden or Norway also.
There were several European countries. Like, biggest thing I read was it was going to come down to the US, and most people didn't expect the US to do anything.
Well, and it's also interesting because I remember back when... So first I'm going to bring up the fact that Dead Space 2 had microtransactions where you could buy like nodes and stuff to level up your character preemptively. But for some reason, nobody got up in arms till the third game. But like, you can buy components for your gun. And people are like, oh my God, you can buy a better gun? It's like, yeah, but you don't really need to. Like, but you can, but you don't need to. So...
To me, that kind of cycles back to if it's well designed where you're not punishing people and trying to forcibly steer them on, if it truly is just an add-on thing for people that want an easier experience, go forth, God's blessings on you.
That was an argument someone was making when I was talking about why I was partially against. While I'm apathetic about it,
yes.
I still don't like it. I'm apathetic because I don't see the economic situation changing that fixes it. And the argument a friend of ours made was, he said he was arguing for people that do playthroughs and live streams, and those people that they get this stuff to improve character looks and stuff because all they do is live stream these things or let's play them. And I understand that to a degree. I mean, it's not me.
I I've seen Let's Plays, and this blew my mind. I saw somebody record a 40-minute video. I didn't watch it, mind you. I just saw it exist. They spent 40 minutes just opening 100 Overwatch loot boxes. Like, that was it. And so there's the distinction to me between the loot boxes. I am incredibly apathetic when it comes to a loot box associated with a cosmetic item. When it's a loot box associated with actual progression, like that Shadow of War thing, when it came out, I'm like, I'm not buying this right now because we're going to get a Game of the Year edition and they're going to remove it at some point. And we've already seen the latter of those 2 points. And I can defer to you on this one if you want, Nick. But when they removed it, like, didn't even feel like a victory.
Well, they waited to remove it until the game had been out for several months, correct?
Yeah, they did. So it's like, oh, we have seen what you're saying and we want to react to it. And everybody's like, no, people just aren't doing this at all now. So now you can take it out, say you're morally superior, and whatever.
And I think the bright side is pretty well everyone took that angle too. It's like, yeah, they saw the cynicism that was inherent to that ploy. It's interesting that you mention Overwatch. I know that my older brother plays Overwatch quite a bit, and he's not particularly upset by the notion of loot boxes, and it doesn't really seem like anyone is with that because it's just visual flair content. You can either earn them in game or you can go ahead and pay for the experience. And to me, that kind of seems like just a good best practices. This should never lock out content. Mm-hmm. And I think about like MMO cash shops with Final Fantasy XIV, and what you have within those kind of circumstances is you'll be able to buy mounts similar to mounts you can get in game, but those mounts in games are a little bit different. It'll be like a different kind of coloration to that mount, and you'll have to complete high-end raid content to do that. And to me, that seems like kind of a nice little trade-off thing of like these little kind of in-game community status symbol things. If you want to buy them, you can buy them, but it's going to be something that's clear to everyone that you bought this. And if you earned this, if you beat this hardest raid tier or did this incredible challenge, you're going to have something similar to that, but everyone's going to look at that and know you're the guy who was able to clear that content. You're not the guy that paid $25. That seems like a nice equilibrium to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
I was going to say, like, at least Origins didn't lock content behind. Mm-mm. So to say, the best steed mount is the weird chocobo abomination.
You've seen that monster.
Which you just had to beat that special side quest.
You did, yeah, and that involved knowing how to add to 15.
Yeah, and knowing where it was at. That was it.
So that was a weird side quest. But anyways, as we come into the tail end of this, I would ask where you think this whole loot box microtransaction thing is going. Yeah, Brent, why don't you go first?
I think, personally, I don't 100% think it's going to go away because, like I was talking, one of the same two friends of ours, the argument that I made was the problem is that shareholders and board members don't view things the way that we do, and we don't view things the way that they do. So just not buying the game, their automatic assumption is, oh, you didn't like Battlefront 2, but Fortnite still does well with all of its microtransactions, so clearly that's what we need to do. Just don't. Not doing microtransactions is probably the only way you get it across, and even then, you're probably still running into a wall. You're never going to beat this one.
And I personally think that you see enough developers coming out saying no microtransactions that I would respectfully disagree that it's not being... There is a shareholder-developer dissonance there, but I do believe that it's communicated. But Nick,
right? I agree with you and you entirely there. It's not going to go away, Brent, but it is one of those things that you're seeing a backlash where this needs to be kind of a first do no harm. I mean, in terms of going away, you can't get that toothpaste back in the tube. Mm-hmm. These guys have seen how much money you can make off of doing that, and if that funds game content that you can actually play, that is awesome.
And I can't see EA and Activision stopping. Those are the two big problem ones.
And yeah, nothing else from you though, Nick?
Well, no.
Okay.
I've said enough.
I personally think that the idea that we had been seeing there for a minute, like with your Battlefront 2 and your Shadow of War, I don't think we're going to see loot boxes that are gating game progression aggressively, because I think there is a big, ugly pushback against those. I do think in multiplayer games we'll continue to see it. cosmetic microtransactions are never going away. But I think the stuff that's impeding people's ability to enjoy games, I don't think that's long for this world, especially with as much pushback as we're already seeing. That it hasn't even been 2 years of that being a thing.
If we can settle into a consumer-friendly equilibrium, I don't really see what the fuss is.
Yeah, same here, especially with all the legislation going through about is this considered gambling. And I'm looking forward to when the ESRB has to put a thing on their box, 17M for gambling, and it's actual gambling. That'll be fun.
It's kind of interesting. It's almost full circle, because back in like the 1940s and 50s, and you had that uproar about pinball machines and whether pinball machines constituted gambling, and here we are yet again with, is gaming gambling?
80 years later, buddy. All right. So, anything else from anybody else? All right, fantastic. Well, that being said, Brent, thank you very much for coming on.
You.
Nick, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Josh.
What do you think about microtransactions? Do you think they're God's gift to gaming? Do you think they're something that should be scoured from the world? What's your favorite independent developer as well? Get online and let us know. But until next time, my name is Josh, and this is Co-Opinions.